Hi everyone, it's Darlene. Welcome back for another card video. Today's card features butterflies from a couple of different sets. I took the small one and this medium one from the Garden and Bloom set, and this other small one from Watercolor Wings. I'm also using this Hero Arts background stamp called Cross Hatch, and I've got my Gonzai Tambi watercolor set, and finally I've got this Stamp It Up Rotary alphabet stamp. And you can put any word in there that you want, and these little things roll around so you can pick your letters, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about that later. Now to get started, I'm going to take some Ranger Archival ink and I'm going to stamp all of these butterflies up the middle. And I'm using this ink because I wanted something that dried quickly, but it turns out that the embossing powder actually stuck to this ink as well. So it was no big deal though, because this gives a really nice crisp image and I really like that. So, but it is sometimes a little hard to clean off. So I wanted to show you how I clean off this ink. So first I take my absorber that I got from Amazon. I just wipe up whatever I can from each of the stamps, and it's going to stain your absorber, but that's okay. It really doesn't hurt it at all. And then after I'm done with that, I take my StazOn, because StazOn will take off anything. So remember, I've already applied what I normally do for a stamp, and now I'm just going to tap on some of this StazOn. And then I'm going to take a baby wipe because some of the ink will come off onto my StazOn applicator. So I'm just going to wipe that off to make sure I get all the ink off my applicator. And sometimes I let it sit for a little bit, but this time I'm just going to wipe it off. So you'll see that once I wipe it, quite a bit of ink is still coming off, even though I wiped it with my absorber, which is all I normally do for a lot of my stamps. But because these stamps are multiple steps, so they're layering stamps, I want to be able to see through them. So I want to make sure I clean them really well. Now I've heard this StazOn is not good for your photopolymer stamps. I don't know if that's true or not. I haven't had any issues with them, but typically I'll run over it one more time with the absorber to get any residue off. So anyway, that is how I clean off the archival ink. This is just some Versamark ink, and I'm applying it to my Crosshatch Bold Prints Hero Arts stamp. And I like to apply my ink upside down on background stamps just because it's easier to get enough pressure on all the different pieces of the cardstock. So I put a piece of scratch paper on top, and then I just peel it off the back. And that way I make sure I get the whole thing covered. Now I'm going to emboss this with some clear embossing powder. You can see the embossing powder is also sticking to my archival ink. I was sort of hoping that the archival ink would dry first so that you would be able to see the cross hatch on top of the butterflies. And you could see it a little bit, but you can see where it embossed also on the butterflies, but it was no big deal. I'm still going to get the same look that I want. So I like to first put water on my cardstock before I put the watercolor on. Usually I brush it on, but because I'm doing the whole entire piece of cardstock, which is Strathmore watercolor paper, by the way, I decided to spray it, and that just gave me good coverage all the way around. Now I've got this really big fat brush, which I was excited to use. I haven't used this one yet. I thought it would be fun to just apply a bunch of watercolor using this big fat brush. And so I just put some, because I already had some water on my cardstock, it's applying really quickly and really well. These Zig Gonzai Tambi watercolors are very vibrant. They're very colorful, and so it really doesn't take a lot of the paint to really get good color on your cardstock. I think of these paints almost as acrylics because they are pretty solid, they're pretty non-transparent, and you get a really nice vibrant color when you lay them down. So I put yellow in the middle. I can't remember the number, but I'll put it in my blog post. And then I'm taking my favorite color, it's kind of a blue-green, and I'm going to put this right next to the yellow. And notice now I just put some water on my brush, and I'm just tapping the area between the green and the yellow, and that will help to blend those two colors together. And then finally I'm going to take some blue, and this is all real time, so this is going very, very quickly. So if you wanted to use this like for a Christmas card or something that you're doing in bulk, I think this would be a really easy technique to use. Alright, so I'm going to do that on the top and then on the bottom, and you can see my background coming through, and you can still see the butterflies because I stamped them first. So I'm going to finish up this blue at the bottom here. And you know how sometimes you just really have a hard time stopping with watercolor because you could just keep going on and on. So I kind of thought about it. I'm like, okay, now I've got good coverage. I put my brush down. I kind of thinking about it. I even let go of the brush and decided, no, I need to do just one more thing. So I grabbed some of the blue and I tapped it on the line between the green and the yellow because I just wanted a little bit more color in that area. And because you're putting blue on top of yellow, it's going to turn a little bit green, and so it blended really nicely. I'm glad I did that. So just after that little bit, I was okay with it. Next, I'm going to take this Lawn Fawn Happy Birthday to You, and I just want the U. So I'm going to take some Stampin' Up! Black cardstock, and I'm going to die cut that out, and then I'll just trim it off right in front of the Y, so I just get the U. Now, if you have a die word with just the word U, that's even better. I didn't have one, so I just made do with what I had. And it came out just fine. All right, so let's talk about this Stampin' Up! Alphabet Rotary stamp. It's got 13 different letters that you could use, and you can spell whatever you want. There's a little spinner at the bottom that'll rotate between the letters. There's, of course, all the letters, and then there's all the numbers and a couple of other characters. And it's got blanks also, so you could see right here I've got a blank that I put at the end because I didn't need it, and then I also have a blank in between the two different words. And you can spell anything you want, which is kind of cool. That was intriguing me about this stamp. And you just have to make sure that you line it up so that all the letters are right in the center of the bottom of this stamp. And it gives kind of a type-ish, like your typewriter sort of font, and I kind of like that. And it's okay if not all the letters are lined up perfectly. So I'm going to use some VersaFine Black Onyx ink because it's an ink that's really easy to clean, and I didn't want to have to really rub this stamp a lot to get the ink off, so I'm just going to use an easy to clean ink. So I'm going to get some ink on the bottom here. I'm just going to check it to make sure. You also want to make sure that you're pointing, or you've got your letters selected in the right order and in the right direction. I actually did it backwards first. So the first time I did this, I didn't roll it toward this. So you kind of have to roll it toward you and away from you a little bit to make sure that you get all the letters stamped correctly. The first time I used this, it worked perfectly, and this is the second time, so I only had to do this on the second try, and I think it came out really nice. I really like this stamp a lot. So I just trimmed it out, so I have just my words ready to go. Notice I did it on a separate sheet of paper because I didn't want to mess up the card. So I'm going to take this A2 Simon Says stamp die, and I want to cut it out on the left and on the right, but I want to make sure it's even at the top and the bottom. So I'm just going to measure an inch in from the left, and I'll mark it with my pencil. Then I'll measure it an inch in from the left at the top, and that way I know where to line up my die. So as long as I have the same amount of the die hanging off the top and the bottom, it should come out even. And so then I'm going to do, because I stamped these butterflies in the middle, I'm just going to take another inch off the right side coming in on the top and the bottom and cut it out. I just added some black cardstock here. I'm just measuring how much I need of it because I don't like to waste any, so I'm just going to cut it exactly where I need it. So I'm going to mark it with my pencil, and I'll run it through my paper trimmer. And then I'm just going to apply that to the left-hand side, and this card base is just Nina Solar White. I don't know if I mentioned it, but I used watercolor paper for the butterfly panel. Now I'm using my ATG, and by the way, I don't know if you know, but you can curve your ATG. So I'm curving it right around the edge of this panel because it's a watercolor, so it is a little bit warped because I put a lot of water on there, and just make sure that it stays in place and it doesn't get the card bumpy at all. Alright, so once I get that put into place, I'm going to use the black watercolor from this set, and you know, sometimes I do dots with some distressing, some black soot or whatever, and they kind of fade, but this black actually really gives you a solid black spray, and it's awesome. It just stays solid black. So I'm going to be really careful. I'm just going to tap it 2 times because I just want it to be just a little bit of a splatter, and I also wanted a little bit to get on the white also. I didn't just want it to be on the watercolor panel. But anyway, from now on I think I'm going to be using this Gansai Tambi black to do my paint splatters. Alright, so I'm going to take my sentiment and I'm going to put some tape runner on it, and I'm just kind of figure out where I want to put it. I'm going to put it at the bottom hanging off toward the edge, and then I'll take my U. I've got my tweezers, and I'm going to use a 2-way glue pen. I'll just tap the glue on the back, and that way my tweezers, I can sort of hold it up, see exactly where I want it, and I'm going to overlap it just a little bit with the Just Awesome sentiment. So I'm going to press that down, and that'll do it for the card today. I hope you enjoyed that. I thought it was really fun to make with that big fat brush, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.